Good afternoon, Pak Agustan.
Good afternoon, Professor Lin.
So, as a researcher at BRAIN, how has the agency's unique structure of integrating various scientific research disciplines and bodies impacted your work and research processes?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think it's very interesting to discuss about the structure of the BRAIN right now. After 2 years experience, we, especially me now, understand that the research group now is more focused for the small group to do the same patient, the same topic, the same research area, and then it could be produce a lot of things that may be useful for these necessities of the research activities in Indonesia actually. But I think the small group like this one right now maybe need more communicate to other because now we have at least 10 research organization and then almost 85 if I don't mistake research center, and then this very big and can be collaborate in more eventually in more close relationship. I think so.
So, given that you have given us some numbers about this merger, BRAIN has also been described as a super agency. Maybe you can share with us some of the advantages and challenges that you've just described with this new approach to making a super research agency.
Yeah, in my opinion, at least there are two considerations. The first one, we understand that there is one side of BRAIN that conduct a policy analysis, and the other one is conduct the research. And actually, these two separation of the activities, I think we have a strong and positive and negative indication. Previously, with the research institution with different agency like nuclear and then space and then BPPT or basic science like LIPI, I think it's more focused with different field. But right now with the integrated into BRAIN, and there are two sides like policy and then pure research, I think we need to consider again the how to connect or how to bring the science for the community. Then, and I think this is a very tough job for the BRAIN, the function how to make the result from the research into useful for the community by integrating into the policy and the research organization.
Yeah, so that was a really good answer about this integration between science and policy. And I know that BRAIN is now like the sole national research agency of Indonesia. So how does this centralization of both research and policy efforts kind of influence your own research projects, right, and its direction and focuses?
My own research?
Yes, like how does it influence this centralization? How does it influence your own research? So maybe you can say a little bit more about that.
Since my research is more specific on the geospatial topic, I think it's not more influenced, but for the other research topics like social science or maybe for the other research field, I think the centralization is very difficult to control because we understand that Indonesia is very large country, maybe almost 10 million square kilometers, and if we control by only one centralized institution, I think it's very difficult because for the theory of the modern management, I think it's very difficult in terms of span of control. But BRAIN recently will also conduct which we call BRIDA, Badan Riset and Innovation Daerah, Badan Riset Inovasi Daerah. So maybe it's related to the regional autonomy for the Indonesia. So I think by make some autonomy for its region, I think because the necessities of research is different for place to place. for example, in the Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, I think it's different. The challenge or the necessities that needs a research. For example, the Kalimantan maybe need the research on water, pure water, and maybe I think for the other place like Sumatra, maybe for deforestation, research on deforestation, and then biology or something. But I think by integrating into Jakarta framework, I think it's very difficult. Yeah. So I think it's wise to make it some autonomy for the research organization.
Thanks for clarifying some of the new directions that is going. And can you tell us maybe some of the most significant projects or research findings you have been part of during your time at BRAIN, and how have these contributions kind of impacted the broader scientific community, society? As you've mentioned, a lot of the science need to be translatable to policy making and have to have some form of usefulness. So maybe you can share with some of the most significant projects or research findings you've been part of.
Yeah, for the research program, for actually BRAIN have a new improvement or innovation like RIM or maybe expedition. I think it's very good example. Yeah, for example, for the disaster topic, now we can integrate all the different topic, different expertise like social disaster and then natural disaster and then policymaker that can collaborate in one frame, which we call Research Indonesia Maju or RIM or maybe Research and Expedition. So now the scientists can conduct a research in maybe more collaborate way. But for the flexibility, maybe we're still looking for the best form, yeah. Especially for the funding system, because many scientists also can complain about the mechanism to get the funding, to get the operational fund, for example, to conduct the survey. So maybe this is the homework for the BRAIN to improve the system. But the idea, I think, is in the right pathway, I think.
Thanks for enlightening us about the challenges that BRAIN faces in terms of trying to look for research monies. So maybe reflecting on your own career at BRAIN, what advice will you give to aspiring researchers who are also considering working or having a career at this large integrated research agency like BRAIN?
Yeah, since BRAIN adopt the merit system for the individual way, yeah. So I think the most important things is the spirit of the keep the fighting spirit, yeah, for each research individual way. How to they have a goal to to produce a good research and publish them in the reputable journal of make it in the good conference. So I think by collaborating in the individual way, in the small group, research group, and produce good research, I think it's important. Yeah. So because now the researcher is asked to produce the quality papers, yeah, and publish in the quality or reputable journals. So I think this is a very challenging way to get this kind of the path. But if we think for the necessities for the Indonesian as a nation, I think we must go back again to the concept of the science for the community itself. Yeah, not only for the researcher, but it can be useful for the community or our nation. I think so. Yeah.
Any last notes, or do you stop to record?
This is a low power mode, so the battery is running out.
Tapi masih rakam betul?
Masih.
Yeah. So any last notes for your audience who's watching this podcast right now?
Notes?
Yeah. Any last words?
Okay, the last words to audience, because we talk about the research institution in Indonesia, yeah. So I think the most common way to keep our spirit in the research, the first thing is collaborate We must make some collaboration between researchers, and then communication, because we must communicate what we done, what will we do, so we can understand each other, so we can make some collaboration again. So communication, collaborate, and then adaptive for the changes in itself. So I think we can adopt, because which we call the digital transformation right now affect our life daily. Yeah? For example, co-working space, working from anywhere, use resources in digital, and so on. I think it's very useful and impact in our daily life in research. So I think this is my last note.
Thank you so much,
Professor.
Thank you so much, Pak Augustan.
Thank you, Professor Lin.
Thank you.
Thank you.